Hey everybody, I'm Mark Chaffardini with Go See Talk. Thank you for joining us at Fantastic Fest 2022. We are beyond thrilled, delighted, just brimming with emotion and enthusiasm. Can't even get the words out. Spoonful of Sugar, which is the unexpected prequel to Mary Poppins. We find out where she gets her bag, and a bunch of those things. So please meet the creative team behind the process. We're just going to start with Natalie. Why don't you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Natalie Metzger. I'm one of the producers of the film.
Hi, I'm Katrina, Kudlick, one of the other producers.
Bryce, director.
I'm Myko, Olivier. I'm an actor.
I'm Leah St. Marie, writer.
Matt Miller, one of the other producers as well.
And I'll moderate. So, thank you. I'm so glad I saw this because what I love about Fantastic Fest is you get things that you'll probably never see again. And I think the films that are chosen here are so daring and so bold that if a festival like this picks them up, then you know you guys got something and all your hard work was worth it. So what was the process like putting it together? When did this begin and how did you each contribute to making this jewel box?
Leah should start.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, so I was working for, I won't say his name, producer, actor in Hollywood, and I was really tired of writing stuff for other people. So I was like, I'm going to do my own thing now. And I wrote this, I was like, what are some really cool characters to put together into a movie? I was like, well, Lolita and Halloween Mike Myers, but when he's a kid. Let's see what happens when I mesh those. And so I wrote it, and then it was a finalist for Screencraft, which is when you got it.
Yeah, and so I actually had multiple people send me the script and were like, you have to read this. Like, this is a really intense, weird script. And so I read it, and usually when I read a script, I'm like, okay, I'll read the first 15 pages and see if I like it. And I just read it and couldn't stop reading, and I'm like, what? And so I called Katrina and I was like, you have to read this right now.
Yeah.
And so she read it that morning.
I read it and I pushed all of my meetings back. I had a packed day. And I was like, no, I gotta finish this script.
Yeah. And then I love working with vanishing angles so much. And we wanted to find something together again. And so you guys emailed me, were like, hey, what do you guys have? That's horror. And I sent it to you, and it just it went faster than most projects I've ever been on, just because I think everyone was just so into it and attracted to it. And then here we are.
Yeah, so we got on board and we brought it to Sam Zimmerman and Emily Gatto over at Shudder, and they were just floored by it. It was right up their alley. And then it was one of the quickest green lights we've ever had, and then the longest wait until production because we got greenlit and then COVID hit. And then we were like, all right, I guess we'll wait to find out when we're going to make this movie. And we just kept sort of pushing the date until there was a window that it felt safe.
Yeah.
Well, there's something very central to the story, which is family. And I think one thing that is very abundant at a festival like Fantastic Fest is it's less about the mindless slasher, the sort of nebulous foe. It's what happens internally when a family starts to break apart. Sinister was one, Babadook is another, and I think Spoonful of Sugar is going to carry that legacy, so to speak. Because what's scarier than the people who share, a room and a house with you? So, Mercedes, when you saw this, I guess, did you have in your mind that, this could take place in the 40s, the 1800s. Was there something essential about keeping it in the contemporary setting?
Yeah, so we purposely made it pretty timeless in places. You'll see different pieces of technology and different things that they're wearing, because I feel like it is a very classic story. And it's more so about the characters than we're not thinking about what are the cops doing during this, or just other outside elements. And so even though it's more current, we purposely made it like that. Yeah.
Well, Micah, this isn't spoiling anything, but I think one of the things that's interesting again about the festival is when there is a foe, an antagonist in the film, it's not just heavy. Almost in all these movies, everyone's tormented, evil, the bad guy, and it's sort of like a battle of wits. Not wits to say, but there's more than one bad guy. So your wife is the bad guy, your son's a bad guy, the baby. So how did you
all
go?
bad guys.
Yeah.
We all definitely have a flaw that an audience could be like, that's a little messed up. And even it doesn't matter how nice I am, I'm not doing good things either. I think my character feels trapped in a situation, but that doesn't make him good. So I think that it really, this movie highlights each one of the characters' kind of scary thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what makes them the bad guy?
Yeah. But let's go back to what we were talking about before we started rolling. When you work with a child who doesn't get the whole story, what is the interaction? What's the pacing? How do you have screen time blocking with a young child?
You know, for me, a lot of it was like just making sure that we had some kind of connection, because it's interesting because I'm playing a character that's kind of afraid of his child. You know, like I'm unsettled by my own kid, and it's trying to make sure that we're walking on eggshells, making sure that he's okay, and what is like it's a balancing act between him and his mother and me. And so on set, because there's a lot of topics in this that Danilo can't really like be a part of the discussion. It's kind of like just make sure that we can focus on a connection and what is happening in each individual scene, trying to make sure he understands the stakes of each scene, because we have to act with him. So like whenever he has a freak out, we have to give him reason to be scared, because we have to be scared of him.
Mm-hmm.
And what he might do or how he might react. So it's kind of just taking each scene individually and making sure that we understand the stakes of the particular thing that we're acting in.
We also bonded a lot over video games.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Myko and Danilo were like always like chatting about video games, so they actually got along really, really well.
Yeah, we got on really well.
Yeah, and
What
even
were some of them
more
that you were?
Oh, he loves Rocket League.
Okay.
Like, I play Rocket League. It was the one thing I was like, he's like, do you play video games? I'm like, yeah, I play video games. I play Rocket League with my friend. He goes, Rocket League? Anytime I saw him, he's like, hey, I want to play. Let's play. I'm like, sure. I don't really have a gaming system myself. I have to go to my friend's house. Maybe we'll play then.
I do feel like everybody took on a role with the cast-wise with the actor Danilo that like they take on in the film. Like, especially Morgan. She was very protective of him on set throughout the filming, and he like looked at her very adoringly throughout. Like it almost felt like this sort of like big sister vibe, that like she was his safe space around set. And then like I could also tell he was a little intimidated by Kat Foster, who played his mom. Like she is a presence on set as an actor, and I think like he felt that and sort of like walked on eggshells around her a little bit. And then like when Morgan came to set, sort of like went to her and sort of found that shelter that he needed at times. And so like it was interesting that they found those sort of connections naturally without it being forced, and it sort of played off screen, not similarly now, but on screen.
Right.
But
But
I
we
think it
definitely did
reinforced
have
it.
different relationships, you know, with him. Like I agree with you. Like his relationship with Kat was a little bit on eggshells, trying to make sure it was a little bit intimidated. Where Morgan was very like affectionate and like comforting, and I was fun. I had to wear that badge. You know, that was my cross to bear, and I did what I could.
But anytime you cast a kid, I mean, people talk about this, you cast their parents too, and that was like, as we went through the casting process, we probably saw, compared to any other role, we saw more auditions for the kid than anything else. And luckily his parents had known of Vanishing already. His cousins had acted in one of our films. And so there was like already a level of trust for us as a company of filmmakers, because they had such a good experience with that project, and like they'd heard through the grapevine. And so when it came down to sort of sitting down and discussing the sort of sensitive nature of this script and how to approach it with Danilo, like they were very sort of like open to the process and helped us figure out the best path. And they actually sort of dictated what they felt comfortable him knowing about the creative and what to hold back. And so like we kind of looked to them to be like, okay, like this is the scene we're doing. And I mean, I feel like you should talk about this more than I should. But.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's like they would explain it to him in terms of like, this is what we're experiencing right now, instead of having him read the whole script. And like even things of like, you're doing this because you're protecting your mom, and so that's why like this is the headspace that's going behind it. And so like then we would talk about that too, and I'd always like sign off with his parents, like what is okay, what is not okay. There's some shots in the movie that are VFX because we're like, it's not okay for a kid to watch this happening, so we're gonna get his reaction and then put it in with the rest of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of remember back in there was a making of E.T. where Drew Barrymore is being told what's happening. You know, E.T.'s dying, and all of a sudden Spielberg's like, bang, and Drew kind of reacts. But it's the director, and it's that connection to that level of storytelling, not like interacting with an alien or some murder. But there's a, you remember the movie Daddy Daycare with Eddie Murphy? There's a really cute outtake where he and the kid who's playing his son, they're just like coloring at the table and they're just having an honest dialogue. It's an outtake, and he's like, you wanna get some lunch? And the kid goes, yeah, right after this take. So it's it's like that inability to get through like what's real, what's not. But he wasn't like lost. It was just charming because it showed you how it. He dug it. But in the script writing process, I guess how there's very few characters in this film. So was it important to have a core group without a lot of coverage of seeing aunts and uncles or extended family or the outside?
Right. I think horror is attractive when you shine a light on just a couple of people, because then you really get to feel what they're feeling and go through it with them. And it also makes it production easier. Right? And that's why the kids' lines are the way that they are, because I was like, what's more attractive?
I also think there's a certain amount of horror that goes with just intimacy. Like, it could be scary if you feel less safe with the people that you're most comfortable with.
Well, and there's a level of isolation, right? Like this family is kind of has isolated themselves, and so like within that isolation, they've kind of created their own kind of ecosystem and like what is okay and what's not, and I think like that's part of it, is that isolation that actually enhances the.
Yeah. It's also all about family, and like for them, it's like so central to like our family is all that exists in the world. So it kind of makes sense for the story that nothing else should exist except for family.
That's great.
Family is its own subculture.
Yeah.
Yeah, which became an irony because we all collectively talk about filmmaking as a familial process. Like, we very much talk about being part of a family unit and try to run our sets that way, like individually or collectively. We've had the privilege of almost all of us working on something, like almost everybody on this project, we'd worked with them previously on something. So like Morgan had been on a film of ours, and same with Kat Foster, Myko and Mercedes had done a film, and like, I've worked with Mercedes on a film, like so.
We've said fixation.
Yeah, so even the crew members coming on, like the people I worked with 4 or 5 films together, and so it's funny to like make this film about largely a dysfunctional family when our whole ideals are about creating function and tightness of a family unit, and so it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, from a production angle, and when you're trying to bring these pieces together, actors are going to do their own thing. I think that a lot of times, if you can give an actor the sort of space to play, they can really make things flourish. But I guess how much foresight, how much vision do you need to have to sort of corral things so that they don't get too far down a rabbit hole, or we're not going to finish if you can't get into character, whatever it is.
Like, in what sense you mean, like shooting on the day of like how much like freedom we have to improv, or like?
Yeah, but then also saying that like I'm sure that you all 3 of you work together and say what scenes are essential, what not, so that you block out a period of time to tell the story, and then you kind of cut through stuff that's unnecessary.
Definitely, I think it just takes a lot of planning. I think what's really interesting about like smaller productions versus bigger productions is if we want to do what we have to do, it's just we have to extra plan and think about it. Like, I had shortlisted this movie like a year before we shot it because it was like pandemic times, and then thought it would be my first feature, then did Fixation, and then did this one, and so it was just like so much time of us knowing like this is exactly what works on the day, this is what we're able to do, and it's like when you're on a movie like this, like you have to think of every prop ahead of time and every single thing, because on a big movie you just be like, hey, we want this, and then like 20 people will like call everyone and make it happen and get it to you in an hour, but like we're smaller.
Yeah. I also feel like it's like going through the script so much. Like, we went through the script, like Leah was like so collaborative in that process of going through the script up to like the day that we were shooting, and then some. And I feel like that's really like what like made it so tight. Like, everything felt essential because like we really like looked at every scene and like troubleshot it and was like, is this necessary? Because we don't really have the extra like money or time to like just like shoot it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
There was a lens of feminism, and there was a lens of is this right for the character? Where's the character going? What is the theme like? Like, your notes were so on point for all of those, for every scene and every character. It's just so well thought of.
Well, I think I'm just going to pull out my cheat sheet. I was, if I was taking a psych class, I'm pretty sure I would watch Spoonful of Sugar. I want to run through some things that I think are themes. So family, it's kind of a no-brainer. Abandonment, mental illness, trust, compassion, delusion, acceptance, jealousy, unconditional love. Does it all fit in? Anything that's wrong?
It's like you just read someone's dating profile. I was gonna
Lots of big stuff.
There's a bunch of fingers in the room.
But I think like on that too, it's like something that originally attracted me to the story is like you watch a Disney movie and the theme of a Disney movie is family is great.
Yeah.
And I'm like, family can be great. It's like, what is family? What is greatness? What happens when it gets torn apart? And so we're looking at things like family, but through like a super different lens. And like all of those things we're trying to kind of like rip apart from what usual movies say about it as like the safe theme.
And I think like jealousy is like one of the most interesting things on that list because you don't associate jealousy with family, you associate that with like romantic relationships, but like this movie is a lot about jealousy and each of the characters is very jealous and takes ownership of the different family members. And so I think that's like just something you don't necessarily associate with family that very much can go wrong, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I love and am feared of Kat Foster's role in the film. She scared me from the very first frame, but in terms of jealousy, like I can see how the young child was very apprehensive about it. I was like, give me anybody but her. But I think that there's something to be said about that. You know, you want, in a way, her character is like, well, if my son's not going to love me, I'm just going to take my ball and go home. You know, I'm just done with this. And so that's kind of, you know, there's always going to be an affection you have for a child, but then sometimes it's like, you really push it to the limit, don't you, kid? But, turning point here, who loves Guy Ritchie movies? Okay. So I like to glean a lot of life lessons from movies, and the one from Snatch, he's like, always be wary of any man who has a pig farm. And after this movie, I'll be wary of anybody who has an apple tree or citrus tree on the property. Because holy crap, it's very telling what you don't know. But like, was that in the script? Like, what things?
A brick top?
Do you know what nemesis means? But like, were there elements that once you started shooting, were like, well, we need to either enhance on this or pull it back from the script, or just it was never there to begin with. We just found it on the day.
I think, well, I wrote apples into the script because it's prevalent in the Godfather oranges, right? Every time you see an orange, somebody's going to die. But then the two of them like amplified it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like all of us really love visual motifs a lot, but like Leah just writes with visual motifs, and it's something that's like when we do like we go through and I do my breakdown, I'm like, okay, what are these from the script? How do we enhance certain ones? But I feel like they were all there from the beginning. It was just like amplifying what's already there even more.
Yeah.
Lots of apples.
I think it also just ties eroticism. I'm not sure why. Like I think maybe it ties into the like whole Adam and Eve
Yeah.
Adam
Yeah,
and Eve
totally.
thing. Is that this movie has a lot of sexual content in it, more than I've ever been used to, and so I think that kind of it's like a sexy and deadly kind of thing.
Well, they're also associated with teachers, like, which like I think is interesting. So there's this like Adam and Eve like sexuality, but there's also this like the
What else
school
did
farm, you
apples
know,
say?
like the tutor, the like babysitter,
Well, it's
you
the
know.
fruit
It's
of knowledge, which is that.
Right.
But then there's also, I don't know, like even like the apple a day keeps the doctor away. Like there's so much that like I think
Yeah.
you can associate with an apple, or like biting an apple and getting half a worm. Like all of these
Yeah.
things like that are associated with apples. I think every one of them somehow plays into this film.
Definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. And like with that and like religion too, it's like I kind of think of Johnny like Jesus in a way, and it's like kind of think of like you know Millicent as like Mary Magdalene, and so it's kind of like a mix up of all these characters together.
I can't wait for that review headline.
There's the Old Testament, there's the New Testament,
Yeah.
and there's the new fucked up Testament.
Actually, she thinks
Thanks
it's
for
kind
taking
of like that. Yeah, it's the character does. I can be looked at in a very weird way.
Listen, that Danilo can't be here right now.
Well, it's funny. There was a movie that played at Fantastic Fest.
Danilo, what do you think about apples? Like Temptation of the Apple.
Granny Smith game. Well, there was a movie that played at Fantastic Fest called The Death of Dick Long, and they tried to keep one of the characters, a very young girl, from kind of knowing anything that was going on in the movie. So there's a part where the term cocksucker comes up, and she says "cot hugger," and then they tweak it in post
Interesting.
to make it look like she said it. And so she's like, well, what's a cot hugger? And Daniel Swanhurst's like, somebody who loves cots. So it's that level of keeping children at the periphery in terms of telling a story. But since you all come from different aspects of the film to contribute to the film, are there things that you just loved once you saw it put together? You're like so proud of this, or I think that this acting picked up on the set design, or something like that. Something that you were really proud of once it all put together.
I'll
I'll go first and everyone else can think about it. I think what's especially interesting about this movie is like good dramas, characters have alone moments where we're just in them in their own special space. And a lot of the alone moments in this movie are masturbation scenes. And so that's something I think that is like very unique about this, is like what is this person thinking and feeling when they're alone, but through like the lens of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really love the house as a character. We haven't actually talked about that yet, but like it really, the house was written a way in the script, and I read it a certain way. I actually pictured more of like a sort of like white picket fence, sort of more like colonial, like that sort of thing. And as we were location scouting, Katrina sort of led the charge on that and found so many beautiful options that were all wildly different. And I think it was like looking at each like crazy different version, we all collectively started talking about what that would mean. And when we got to this house, which largely like the homeowner had rebuilt a lot of it himself, and it had that sort of like tactile feel of like somebody who had lived there and built it for his family. And like knowing that Myko's character was this guy working with wood a lot, like it felt sort of like that he had his personal touch on it. But then the isolationism that Natalie mentioned earlier, like we could feel that, we could feel this family sort of separated, and it also just created this environment that like anywhere we pointed the camera just looked dynamic and beautiful. Like it had all this depth to it, and like the light shone off the wood really beautifully. And so like there was just something about, I mean, we shot the majority of the film there. Even scenes that don't take place there, we found some times to shoot there. And so like became a home does as a film crew. And I just like, I don't know, we really sort of grew to love that house.
Yeah, I think like that was one thing that was surprising to me in the making of it, is that I like loved the story and I loved these characters and I was just obsessed with like how fucked up this film is. But then I wasn't imagining it being so visually stunning, and it is like with like the vision that they put together combined with like Nick Matthews like cinematography. It is gorgeous to look at, and so it's kind of this weird thing where you're looking at this beautiful, strangely dark home that then like all these things are happening in, but it's it has such a visual quality that is kind of surprising.
I feel like I always like saw the horror in it, obviously from the beginning. Like we all loved it because we're like, this is really fucked up and like wild, which is great. But like as like seeing it like come together at the end, I'm like, wow, like there's such a desperation for how much each of the characters like want to connect as a family. And this like idealization of family that like in the end is like not just like scary, but like almost like you're almost kind of like laughing because you're like, this is so desperate, like I have nothing else to do. And I feel like I really enjoyed that in like the final cut, that I like feel like there's moments to even laugh with them because you're like, oh my god, they want this so badly. I have no other like bodily response but to like laugh in this moment.
And I think for me, it's how the intimacy was addressed. So I'm proud of Mercedes for taking care of me, because one of my main concerns when I read the script was like, this isn't normally the kind of movie that I'd be interested in, but I trust her and I trusted her vision and stuff, and I really expected her to kind of take care of me, make sure that she is honoring how I feel with these very intimate and dark scenes. And so I felt very safe on set, and so I think she did a great job of making me feel comfortable with the intimacy that I was supposed to be performing. Having never really done it, it was like 0 to 60 with this kind of stuff, so I was like, okay, what are we doing today? You want to take my shirt off?
That was our number one goal.
Well, you had intimate scenes very early on too.
Oh, yeah.
Almost like your first day, I feel like. Was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first day was getting in the bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was day one.
Yeah.
Only get it all right now.
Well, I think it's it's funny that Myko says this, but that's something that Kat Foster, who plays the mom, also said, was that she was like, this is not the type of movie that I would watch or like want to be part of, but I trust this team. And so I think that's like an interesting thing of like having this like such a messed up script that people are like, this is crazy, but okay, let's do it. And I think that kind of contributes to, you know, each of the actors, like you can feel them each very much coming from their own perspective and point of view.
Yeah, I think one of my proudest moments was we showed a almost locked cut to like the main financiers of the film, and I stepped out of the editing room to call just to like see what he thought, and his response was, "How did this movie get made?" And I was like, "Because you paid for it."
I showed the script to people, they were like, that scared me and that made me uncomfortable. And we're like, that's the goal. Like, that's how you feel, so I'm happy about
When
it.
we were first trying to get into it, like someone went home and we were like, I need to go like be with my family right now. I'm sorry, I can't make this
I remember you pitching to some people and they were like, yeah, we love horror. And then they read it, they were like, no.
Yeah. Yeah, someone said it's the most disturbing thing they ever read. So I mean, watch it.
I mean, when I read it, like I was interested. I was very curious about all the messed up stuff that was happening. But then it was just putting myself in there. It was like, am I comfortable doing this myself? Because I thought that the story was very engaging and interesting. It was just, it's like you have to really trust your filmmaker. Like in this industry, like an actor has to take care of themselves. So it's like I had to be on the phone with her. I had conversations with her. I was like, hey, so like, let's talk about this. It's like, what do you want to do with this? Because I don't want it to just be like gratuitous nudity here. Like, what are we telling?
Yeah.
Like, what is the story we're telling? Because it's important, and that's why you would use it. So,
Yeah, there has to be a reason for it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has to be.
Yeah.
I want to say one more. My personal favorite creative contribution was we greenlit this, got this film greenlit, and it pushed and pushed and pushed. By the time we finally got to make it, it was December, and it was written as a Halloween film. And I took a page out of the Shane Black notebook, and I was like, guys, we got to make this Christmas. It's like I'm obsessed with the idea of like making any film you can a Christmas movie so that you get playing at least once a year. And I was like so excited that everybody was on board with making it a Christmas movie. And then we got to editorial, and there's a sequence in the film where we needed like a music cue, and I was like, guys, it's gotta be the Nutcracker. And I was like, what? And I was like, guys, it's gotta be the Nutcracker. And I was pretty proud that like it worked and everybody came on board with it. So that, if I did nothing, it was like Christmasifying a crazy messed up baby.
Because there was a Christmas tree in there, but it wasn't really elaborate. It was just all white lights, right?
But
Okay,
yeah, I
so-
mean, enter Matt Miller.
Yeah.
Like, I'll pick up the clues.
Anytime you can make something subtly Christmas.
We were having a discussion about that yesterday. It was like anything that has Christmas in the movie could technically be a Christmas.
That's
Rocky's a Christmas.
doesn't need to be.
Black
Yeah.
Christmas,
Yeah.
one of the best movies.
Yeah.
Well, and I think like Christmas also has so much associations with family. It's like, you know, like that's when you gather together, and so.
And he's Jesus.
Millicent thinks.
So from a construction standpoint, story construction, was the couple looking after really maladjusted or tormented people? Like, can you give me any of the backstory about who the other people under the tree were as caregivers, characters? No?
Can't without giving like the movie away, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
you really can't.
It's too much of a
Okay.
spoiler.
We'll tell you off camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alex, hit the lights. So why don't we break into a little bit of fun? We're in a karaoke room. I don't know how passionate you are about karaoke. I am 110%. My go-to is always Power Love by Huey Lewis. So if we were to bring a microphone, you're not going to be put on set. What's your go-to karaoke song?
I very rarely do karaoke. In fact, I've only done karaoke once, and it was at this very venue, not this room, but a few rooms down. And I sang the song from The Little Mermaid. So, since it's the only song I've ever sung on karaoke, I guess I'll say it's my go-to.
Under the Sea, Kiss the Girl.
It was
Was it part of your world?
Part of Your World.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't know what my go-to one is. One of my favorite ones that I sang, just because it really brought down the entire room, is "Creep" by Radiohead. That's a fun one. But you know, when people get into it though, that's when you know that you're in a room with your people.
Yeah. Welcome to the Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. I really like sad things. It makes me feel a lot better.
Mercedes, we need to turn that frown upside down.
No, it makes my friend.
Play that funky music, white boy.
Okay.
It's been my go-to song for years. I auditioned for Glee with it. Like every time I'm going for the casting director, Robert Ulrich, he always wants me to sing it. Like even if I audition with a different song, so it's like it's still the song. I'm like, well, I'm really comfortable singing this song, and I enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't sing and I don't do karaoke, but if you're putting my feet to the fire,
We are.
Joan Jett's Bad Reputation.
Oh.
Although her voice can be heard in the actual audio
That's
of
true.
the film.
That's true.
She was one of the carolers, the Christmas carolers
Really?
in the
Yeah.
film. And we actually recorded them all singing the Christmas carols. So she says she's not a singer, but she's actually in the
But we have proof.
Does this give you a SAG card now to be able to?
She's equity.
Oh, I thought it escaped it. I thought we'd like
Yeah.
talk about it.
Oh, that's nice.
It's been many years, but I used to do a lot. Like I think my go-to was like Brandy by Looking Glass was like was a go-to one. Now I'd probably choose some Tom Waits songs that I could just grumble my way through with a gravelly voice.
I'm not even sure Tom Waits knows what he's singing.
Yeah, exactly. He used to apparently when he was a kid, he used to just scream to get his voice to sound that way. And I was like, well, mine just happens to sound that way.
Well, great. What is on the horizon for you, individually, together? What are you looking forward to, 2023 and beyond? And when does this movie come out, by the way? Let's look.
Spring of 2023. I don't think we have an exact release date, but spring of 2023. It'll be on Shudder first, and then
After Easter,
will
the
be-
Jesus thing.
Well, actually, we've been trying to target the UK Mother's Day as the release date.
We thought it would be apropos.
Subtle as a brick.
But we'll see. I don't know yet. That's mentally in our brain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Katrina and I are also
Yeah.
writing partners. And so
Okay.
we
Yeah.
have a script we just wrote that we it's gonna shoot next.
Yep.
And our other movie fixation was just at TIFF last week. So these kind of just went bam. So it's the release of both.
Oh, thanks. At the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More work, hopefully.
I'm doing a magical realism script in Italy with Katrina. I'm directing it. We're partnering with Cold Iron Pictures.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What is magical? Can you say that again?
Magical realism. So a woman is a movie theater projectionist, and she's going through the worst heartbreak of her life, and she gets love and dating advice from her imaginary friend, Italian film icon Marcello Mastroianni,
Oh.
who is in love with her.
I heard it differently. I thought you said magical real estate, and I was like, is
It's
that like Minecraft?
The house in this one is a huge character.
I actually wanted to point out before we wrap. I don't know how much people watching this know about the space we're in, but there's multiple themed karaoke rooms, and we were supposed to be in a different one, but now that we're in this one, as soon as we started talking about LSD, I was like, there's no more perfect room than Super Mario Bros. And children, to talk about like LSD and children, to be like a Super Mario room as there's like a Koopa Trooper over your arm. When you were like, what's your first time doing LSD? I was like, I think it's I might have microdosed and I'm tripping.
Mario's in the corner doing mushrooms.
Yeah, what is
What
going
would
on?
pop out if we like hit it up?
No.
What's gonna pop out
I'm
of
gonna put my
it?
hand through that in a second. Get a point.
Well, I'm so glad I got to see the movie. I'm so glad I got to speak to you before the premiere. And is this actually the world premiere?
It is. First time the audiences are seeing it.
Well, check out Spoonful of Sugar. It's how the medicine goes down, and see it as soon as you can. Maybe UK Mother's Day, maybe Easter next year. But thanks for being here. Fantastic Fest 2022. Perfect. Hey. I don't know how to end things, so.